Welcome to Everyday Greatness, a nice little show proudly brought to you by major sponsor ARA Group, one of Australia's greatest supporters of community projects. Everyday Greatness is a show hosted by a real human being, talking to some real people about real human issues that will help make you feel proud again of simply being a good solid Joe bag of donuts. Here's your host, Barnaby Howarth.
Welcome to Everyday Greatness, and thanks for listening. This is a show designed to celebrate the greatness inside everyday people. So grab a drink, kick your feet up, and settle in. Before I start today, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of Australia. I think acknowledging our traditional owners is more important than just reading from a generic, impersonal script. So I'd like to honour our Indigenous Australians from the heart. I love being an Australian, so I'd like to acknowledge those who came before us, those who share their land with us today, and those who follow us. Some of the things that have happened in this country in the past embarrass me as a white Australian, so I'd like to acknowledge that I feel horrible for any pain that's been caused. But I'd also like to acknowledge how beautiful your future, your past, and your place in today's society are. Thank you for sharing your country with us. I want to make special mention today of our episode's sponsor, an individual human being, Sam Mostyn. I asked Sam if her business would like to sponsor this episode, but she told me, I want to sponsor you personally. This is me backing you and what you are doing. Sam helped Prime Minister Paul Keating on the Sydney Organising Committee for the Olympic Games in 2000. She was the first female AFL commissioner, and she's just stepped down from the board of the Sydney Swans. So Sam is kind of a big deal in Australian business. And her decision to sponsor this episode personally has made my head so big, I need to walk outdoors sideways. Thank you, Sam, for backing everyday greatness. People's expectations of who another person should be is often completely different to who that person actually is. People should be proud to be comfortable in their own skin. There's a lot of people out there who adopt the old adage that to be successful, you need to look successful. So there's a lot of people running around today who aren't very successful, but they're trying to look like they are. My guests today, Ryan Fitzgerald and Lael Kassem, are successful because they are comfortable in their own skin, and they look successful because they don't need to keep up appearances to try and fool people into thinking they're happy. They're just happy human beings. Lael Kassem is a female Muslim Australian rules footballer. She's defying cultural expectations on what she should be doing with her life. And Ryan Fitzgerald was touted as a future superstar in the AFL, but his life went in a very different direction. He's now a morning radio co-host on Nova 96.9 in Sydney. Ryan and Lael don't waste time worrying about what other people expect of them. They're just happy running around being the people they actually are. And it makes them both very happy. I'd like to introduce Ryan Fitzgerald right now. Ryan Fitzgerald was the fourth pick in the 1998 AFL draft. His AFL career was cut short on 15 games over 5 seasons. But his life went in a very different direction that few would have predicted. He went on reality TV show Big Brother, where he went in with an angle that he'd failed in most things he'd tried in his life. True to form, Ryan was voted out in 4th place. But Ryan has succeeded in staying himself regardless of what situation he's in. Ryan's now a popular media personality, a smitten husband, and a proud father. He doesn't try and be a different person to impress different crowds. Just looking at the numbers, Ryan doesn't seem like he would be touted as a successful human being. He played 15 games of AFL over 5 seasons for 2 separate clubs. He was voted out of the Big Brother house in 4th place. he started a group with some mates called the Massive Loser Squad. Ryan Fitzgerald doesn't sound like a beacon of success, but on the contrary, he's just a flat-out good man who loves his family. So he couldn't be more successful. Ryan makes no apology for being who he is, and it seems to be working out for him. Ryan joins me now on Everyday Greatness, and I'm proud to say that. Thank you, Ryan, for joining me.
Barnaby Howarth, it's an absolute pleasure, mate.
So if you look at the numbers in your life, you may not look to be that successful a human being. Do you feel like you're a successful man?
It's a really good question, Barnaby. I do, and it's really how you determine success. You know what I mean, and happiness. And for me, I think the two main things that you talk about there is being a husband, a happy husband, and also being a family man, a father. And mate, with the family that I have, I couldn't be happier. Very, very lucky and fortunate to meet my beautiful wife and have two magnificent boys. So, it's all the numbers around that, Barnaby. You can look at those, but I tell you what, it's for me, I'm on top of the world with how my life has panned out.
So you're part of a group called the Massive Loser Squad when you were a kid, and you found out after you'd been voted out of the Big Brother house, you'd been ripped off tens of thousands of dollars by your mates from the Massive Loser Squad. Things were really stacked against you as a young bloke, weren't they?
Yeah, they were. I think it was a defence mechanism. Us boys putting that group together. It was a bit of a piss take, and we just thought, we came from a pretty rough area, grew up down the south of Adelaide. It was a great life, though. We absolutely adored it. And we just were a group of guys that seemed to have a lot of stories and made people laugh about failing all the time. So I thought it would have been a great angle to go into the Big Brother house. And luckily for me, they just thought it was a great storyline. So they threw me in there as the loser.
What a title. So when you were drafted by the Sydney Swans as a young kid, did you think that was the start of your journey to greatness?
Yeah, without a doubt. I mean, it all happened really quickly from me. I went from suburban footy 1 year to SANFL football in the South Australian League, and then got drafted by the Swans. So it all happened really, really quickly. But it was every kid's dream. I absolutely adored football. It was my whole life. It was the only thing I thought I was ever good at. And, to get an opportunity, like you said, unfortunately with injuries and my career being cut short, just to get an opportunity to play, I was so blessed that I could do that.
Your mate at Nova, your newsreader, Matt de Groot, often gives you a bit of stick about being constantly injured in your AFL career. Just how frustrating was it, though, to be out more than you were in during your AFL career?
Yeah, very frustrating, because there was a moment there where I honestly thought that I could compete on the level that everyone else was in the AFL. And my goal, I just wanted to be a regular spot in the first side for the Sydney Swans, but I just, with injuries, having weeks off, and constantly trying to prove myself, it was really, really frustrating when your body just can't do it anymore. And I was having operations and coming back going, oh, God, I can't run as fast as I could. I can't jump as high as I could anymore. In the back of my mind, that started, seeding a bit of doubt in my head. And unfortunately from there, it got worse and worse.
Let me test your memory and ask you a few questions about Big Brother.
Yeah.
So when you went into the Big Brother house, did you go in there with any strategies or tactics you were going to use to be somebody you actually weren't, to try and get ahead in the house?
The strategy that I had, actually, this is funny, Barnaby, because we played with a guy at the Swans, Stephen Carey was his name, and his cousin was Ben. Yeah, Steph was a great man. his cousin was Ben, the guy that won the first Big Brother. So we knew Ben quite well. Yeah.
Here's a stat for you. I played junior footy at Pennant Hills with Ben.
There you go. Yeah, because, Steph was a Pennant Hills boy too, wasn't he?
Correct.
Yeah. So Benny went in there and he sort of gave me some advice on what to do to stay low, stay out of trouble, to try to get all the way through to the end. It helped. I did get all the way through to the end, but my year was the big one as well. The secret was that $1 million was up for grabs. But I honestly believe the whole time that with the background that I had and how fortunate I was to play AFL footy, I didn't think that Australia would vote for me to win that. So the guy that did win it that year was Trev. He was a furniture removalist, and he proposed to his wife. They wanted to start a family. It was a great story, and I always knew that he was going to win it.
Fair enough. Good on you, Trev. So in the house, did you find there were a lot of people who weren't being themselves, people who were just putting on a different face to try and get ahead in the game?
Yeah, it's funny. It is funny, and a lot of people go on Big Brother and they audition as someone, a personality to get onto the show, and then when they get in there, they're totally different. It's a completely different world. It's not reality when you're in there because, there's cameras everywhere. You know what I mean? It's the other hard thing as well is that they put people in there to rub you up the wall, and you can't. In reality, for me, I walk away from those situations, but in there you can't. You have a fight with someone, you wake up the next day, and you got to start it again. So it's a very smart show, the way that they put it together, and those clashes. But there were a lot of people in there, I think, who changed their personalities and were totally different on the show.
Yeah. So with the people rubbing you up the wrong way, how much did the producers of Big Brother pull the strings behind the scenes to make that reality TV show more entertaining?
Yeah, they play a huge role. The storyline on Big Brother is massive. So this is the hard thing. When you're in there, you've got no idea how you're being portrayed to the community. So we were in there and, you do something wrong and then you would stew on it for 24 hours going, oh, God, are they going to show that? How is that going to make me look on the outside? But they can. I mean, reality, there's a huge debate now, and you see it with all of them, like Married at First Sight and The Bachelor, and they can actually take one conversation that you have with somebody else and they can actually, cut and paste it into another conversation, and they can determine that storyline any way that they want. And sometimes I don't agree with that. They'll always defend themselves and say, well, you said it, but they can make you they can turn, they can turn someone into a villain quite easily if they want to.
Yeah. At the end of the day, though, if the producers didn't try and make things more entertaining, would a show about a bunch of strangers sharing a house being filmed 24/7 be interesting?
No, I totally agree with you there. It has to be interesting, and I always knew going in that you're going to get a couple of D heads going in there, and people want to see that. And then it is really, really interesting to see every single character that they pick, and there is a science in doing it and who they cast, and how everybody got along with each other in the house. So you do need. I totally understand. Like I watch Married at First Sight, but it gets me so angry, and it's one of those moments where I have to watch it. So it rolls me up all the time. So it's successful in their casting.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
How did it make you feel when you got out of the Big Brother house and found out you'd been ripped off by your mates from the massive loser squad? I guess they weren't that big a bunch of losers in the end.
No, you know what, Barnaby, I'll hold you up there. They didn't rip me off. So the boys, what happened is that we were selling those T-shirts, and when I got out, I didn't know how it was going. And the first thing that happens when you get booted out of the Big Brother house is that you go in with a psychiatrist, and they sit you down just to see how your mental space is. And I remember this woman going, well, first of all, I've just got to tell you straight up, but your mates have been selling your T-shirts and they've made a lot of money. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, how much? And I found out afterwards that the boys had something like $70,000 in a bank account just selling T-shirts. So the controversy was that they were going to use that money on voting to get me to win. But, that was what the story was. Unfortunately, I can confirm to you right now, Barnaby, that they weren't that smart. They didn't even think about doing that, and they were actually pissing the money up the wall and having big parties on the weekend. It was the other way around. So that's how we lost a bit of the money.
Right. I apologise to the massive losers squad. That sounds like it was a noble way of using the money. The world must have felt like your oyster, Fitzy, firstly playing in the AFL for the Swans and the Adelaide Crows, then being a national celebrity on Big Brother. Were you worried that your time had passed you when you left the Big Brother house?
I always went in there hoping. I mean, it wasn't the be-all or end-all, and I wanted to get into the media industry. So I was just hoping that it may get my foot in the door. I think I was very lucky being from South Australia because South Australia was they were looking for local celebrities for radio and television. Usually in radio, they employ a lot of people from interstate. I think it makes a huge difference by using locals who know the area. And I was very lucky, Barnaby, that when I got out of the Big Brother house, that same year was the year that Nova actually started in Adelaide, 2004. And they basically said to me, well, we want you to come on as our sports reporter and on the breakfast show. And that was 17 years ago. And I've been there at Nova ever since.
Beautiful. You did get your big break in the media when a Nova executive in Sydney asked you to host the breakfast program. Now, I'll just preface this question by saying you're welcome to swear on this show. How did that conversation go down with the breakfast executive asking if you could host the breakfast show?
Right, yeah. So what happened, I did 6.5 years of breakfast in Adelaide, which I absolutely adored. But, at that age, getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, it consumes your life. I then got told, because I said to them, look, I would like to further my career if I can. And they said, well, Fitzy, we would love for you to move to Sydney and do the National Drive show. So I went from starting at 6 a.m., that was our 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. was the breakfast slot, to then starting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And it was heaven. Whipper and I started the Fitzy and Whipper show, and for 8 months, we were doing drive. You get to sleep in. You get all day to prepare for your show. It was just bliss. And then I remember the program director at Nova pulled us in one day, and I thought, oh, this is a bit serious. And he said, guys, I've got great news. We want you guys to be the new Sydney breakfast show. And I looked at him and I went, nah, I don't want to do it. He goes, what are you talking about? Like, this is the most coveted spot in Australia. And I said, no, I've done 6.5 years of getting up at 4 in the morning and I don't want to do it anymore. And he goes, you can't do this. And I said, yes, I can. I'm happy with drive. And I walked out of the room and then he said, oh, look, let's talk about it a little bit more. He opened up the checkbook a little bit more and I said, yeah, I can go back to breakfast now. We can do that.
Very good move. Now, on a different tangent, lockdown has been tough for everybody. I hear you had an emotional Father's Day. Tell me about the conversation you had with your father while he was at the footy in Adelaide.
Yes, so my old man, what I love about my dad is that he's dedicated his whole life to football, playing, coaching, and, like his weekends now are either made up of, the footy club that we grew up in, the Port Noarlunga Footy Club, or South Adelaide in the SANFL where I played, or he goes and watches the Crows. So I said, I thought I'll give Dad a call early in the morning and get it out of the way. And I ring him at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and there's Dad. Dad is at the under 13s Port Noarlunga finals, and I just went, oh, this is his whole life. There's no other happier place that Dad would rather be, down watching the footy and getting a phone call from his son for Father's Day. So he was quite emotional.
Beautiful. And did he realise which son it was?
Yeah. Well, he's only got one son. Actually, here's a little stitch-up we did on him over the years. Barnaby, I found out, Mum told me, I didn't know this, but Dad was engaged to another woman before her, and this woman's name was Elizabeth Taylor. That was just her name. So on radio, I thought, I've got to get him, I've got to stitch him up here. He didn't know that I knew this. So I got a guy at the office to ring my father and say, hi, Mick, you don't know me. I'm really nervous doing this, but my mother is Elizabeth Taylor, who you were engaged to all those years ago. And Mick, for years and years, I've been trying to find out who my biological father is, and Mum's finally told me, and it's you. And he was freaking out. He didn't know he had another child, but it was all made up, obviously. And the funniest thing is this guy from work said to him, Mick, I would really love to catch up with your dad and have a coffee. And my old man goes, oh, mate, I would love to, but I'm really busy at the moment. I've got no time. So even though it was a fake child, he couldn't even find time to have a coffee with his new child.
Ryan Fitzgerald, you've always got a cracking story, and I really appreciate you sharing a few of them with us today. You're a very good man, and I really appreciate you taking the time to come and speak to me today on Everyday Greatness.
You're a good man yourself, Barnaby. Thank you very much for having me, buddy.
Thanks, Fitzy. Thanks. When young children today grow up, they'll find it just as hard to believe there was a day when Muslim women didn't play Aussie rules footy as today's 40-year-olds find it hard to believe there was a day when there was no television. Muslim women playing Australian rules football will be seen as no big deal, thanks to pioneers like my next guest, Lael Kassem. Lael started playing footy after her older brother told her how much he loved playing when he was dominating for the Western Suburbs Magpies. Lael co-founded the Auburn Giants Football Club that gave culturally diverse women a place to enjoy what was largely a forbidden thrill, women's football. Turns out Lael is a half-good footballer. She now plays at the Inner West Magpies, where she enjoys a higher level of competition. Lael Kassem is like any other person at the Magpies Footy Club. She goes to training, works hard, says g'day to her teammates, and gives everything she has to win games of footy. But by being like every other Joe Bag of Donuts, Lael is blazing a trail that will help young Muslim women believe that if they want to play footy, they can. I'm honoured and privileged to say that Lael Kassem joins me now on Everyday Greatness. Lael, thank you and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
What made you start playing Aussie rules footy in the first place?
Well, like you mentioned, I grew up with 9 older brothers, and coincidentally, they started playing AFL, and I watched them growing up playing footy. Back then, I think it was like in the 70s, my mum didn't want them playing rugby league, and she didn't have a clue what AFL was, so she said they could play AFL. And lucky enough, I just followed in their footsteps.
Very good footsteps to follow. Do you still watch AFL outside when you're playing? Who do you follow in the AFLW?
Yeah, I've watched AFL religiously before the AFLW, and I'm a proud Bombers supporter, so they're not going too well this year. But in the AFLW, you can't go past the Giants.
Very true, very true. Why did you decide to start the Auburn Giants Footy Club?
I wanted to normalise playing sport, and I wanted to give people from diverse communities opportunity to play sport and to play what is largely Australian, the most Australian code, and that's Australian rules football. Sport has given me the opportunity to travel and to meet different people and to come into contact with people that I probably wouldn't have. And I was fortunate from a young age to have that opportunity. And when I saw an opportunity to give that to a lot more other girls, I couldn't go past it.
I'm sure there's a lot of girls that thank you. Do you consider yourself to be a trailblazer for other young Muslim women who want to play competitive team sport?
This is a hard one. I think there's so many girls doing so many different things that are inspiring the next generation, and whether it's me or someone like Haneen Zureka, who's a young Lebanese Muslim girl playing in the AFLW, everyone has a part to play. And I think if I've made a small impact on people's lives, then that's amazing. I think that we started and created opportunities for many girls, but there's going to be a lot more girls doing a lot more better things than I have.
Did you have to give up your Muslim beliefs to play footy, or can you still hold true to your Muslim faith and play football?
Definitely. Islam promotes women doing a lot of things and doing anything. Islam for me is a way of life. So in every aspect and whatever aspect I choose to do, it just gives me the guidelines on how to do that and the best way of doing that. So I definitely held strong to my faith. And if anything, sport allowed me to be stronger in those, because I was approached and questioned on a lot of different things, and I had to study and learn more and be stronger in that faith. So with anything, I wear my scarf with pride and my faith with pride, and definitely the two come hand in hand.
Beautiful. How great an influence have your brothers been in your footballing life?
My brothers are my world. Honestly, when I tell people I had 9 older brothers, they feel sorry for me, but I wouldn't have it any other way. They're the most amazing brothers, and they might look scary and big, but they're so soft, and they've just encouraged me to be me. They've encouraged me to go out there and take it on, and they've been a really big influence, and I'm so grateful that they've given me the opportunities that I've had, and it's just helped me grow, not just on the football field, but even off the footy field.
And off the footy field, how great an influence have your brothers been in your overall life?
Well, early on, I would say they've had a massive influence, and I'm grateful that I'm the youngest, because basically I was really brought up with my brothers, and they all grew up in Australia. So from a young age, they sent me to a school in the city, far from where I live, and interacting with. I was the only Muslim girl in my school, so they gave me that opportunity from a young age to have those multicultural conversations, multi-faith conversations, and connections and friendships, and learning to go out there and be on and show the people what Islam's about. And I think that's, if anything's given me a greater perspective and broadened my opportunities. And I think from that young age, it was the best gift they could have given me.
It's a good gift. Have you been able to tell your extended Muslim friends and family that you play Aussie rules footy?
Initially, it was a hard conversation to have, and initially it was frowned upon, but not because of Islamic understandings. It had nothing to do with Islam, because Islam promotes it. It was more of a cultural thing, and every culture has their own value system, and every culture has its own expectations and whatnot. And I think, given the fact that really the Lebanese community, in a sense, is very early on in its generations living in Australia, a lot of their when they migrated to Australia, brought along their value systems. So initially it was hard, but I did it because I I knew that it needed to be done, and those conversations needed to be had, and so that the future generation of girls didn't have those issues. And I don't think it is a problem going forward. But, yeah, initially it was a hard conversation to have. I had a lot of people thought I was crazy. But, yeah, looking back now, they see how happy I am. They look at how much positive influence sport is, and they are definitely getting on board slowly.
I'm sure they were difficult conversations, but I'm glad you had them. Do you find it tough at social gatherings with your Muslim family and friends not being able to sit and talk about your last game of footy, especially if you had a blinder?
Yeah. If anyone, is probably my mum that I would love to have a conversation with. I would love for my mum to come and watch me play footy, and I'd love to have that conversation with her. But, I've come to terms with that she's, 70. She grew up and lived in a different world in a different time, and I understand that she, every mum wants the best for their children, and what the best is in her mind might not be the same. But it's heartbreaking. It is heartbreaking. You want your parents to be proud of you, and unfortunately she can't see that or doesn't really get that. So, yeah, it's hard. But like I said, I think it's changing slowly, and I think with each generation that would not be an issue.
Very true. After your team, the Inner West Magpies, wins a game and the whole club goes back to the club rooms to celebrate and everybody's chatting, laughing, having a good time, having a couple of drinks, do you ever go over in the corner, have a quiet moment to yourself, breathe it all in and think, how good is this?
Yeah, that's what we play footy for, right? Like that's the best thing. That's the camaraderie and in the sheds after the game, win or loss. I think that friendship and that mateship with everyone, we all share that common goal to win. And when we play well, it's the best feeling in the world, and it's kind of what we all strive for and what we play footy for. So, I'm grateful for those moments, and it makes me push harder for the next week.
How disappointed were you that your season was cut short this year due to coronavirus?
We were on a roll towards the end of that season. We started off probably a bit slow, and we beat the reigning premiers in our last game before COVID, and we were pumped to keep going and see what would happen in finals. So as a team and as a club, it was disappointing because, we put a lot of training and a lot of effort into those games, and we're just peaking. So, you know what, but we can't really complain. There's a lot more worse things happening in the world right now, and as long as we're all safe and healthy and we keep each other in that light, given the current situations, disappointing one end, but also grateful for the fact that we're healthy and we're not dealing with a lot of things that many other people around the world might be dealing with right now.
Very well said. If you see those celebrations back at the footy club after the team has a big day or the club has a big day and a heap of wins and it gets a bit out of hand and people start drinking too much, what do you do as a strong Muslim woman? Do you tell them to pull their heads in?
No, definitely not. I'm brought up and my faith tells me that, everyone can each to their own in a sense, and if that's what they value, then I'm happy to see them happy and to see them celebrating. But for me, someone with a faith that doesn't, that I don't drink and I don't like being around those that are drinking heavily. If it gets to that situation, I'd give a high five to a friend and whatnot, and then just leave and let them celebrate. And that's the kind of the different. Not obstacles, but I think the guidelines that my faith gives me to teach me or show me how the best way to celebrate might be and whatnot. So, I celebrate with them as much as I can. And when I feel like it's enough for me, then I just leave and it's all good. There's no judgment on anyone or anywhere. And I see them back at training on the Tuesday or whatnot.
Tell me about your social nights out. What are the main differences between going out with your Muslim mates on a Friday night to going out with your Australian footy mates after a game on Saturday?
I've had the luxury of playing with Auburn, which is 99% Muslim, and then at West, where I was the only Muslim girl. So very different experiences on both ends, and both very similar in a way too. Like, after a footy game, the girls just love to get together and bond and have a laugh and talk about some of the things that happen on the field. But we just do it in different ways. So with the Auburn team, and I remember us always going back to the local, chicken shop and sitting around having lunch and having a laugh with a few drinks, and those drinks being Cokes or waters or whatnot. That was kind of it. But with the West girls, in a similar note, everyone just wants to get together, have a laugh, and talk about things that might have happened and share those stories with one another. And I think, with the West girls, it just involved drinking, and really, and that's probably the only difference. Other than that, as human beings, we all share similar characteristics, and that human connection and the sharing of stories is a universal practice. And I think we come together in, the differences between us and the stories that we might share is what's beautiful about where we live and what we do, and how we share them, whether we're drinking or not drinking, is irrelevant.
Beautiful answer. So let me ask you a question as an Australian human being. How do you feel when the footy season finishes? Do you feel like you have to win the premiership to feel like it was a good season, or is that camaraderie and the going through struggling with your mates together enough?
Definitely don't have to win the premiership to have a good season. That would be great and all, but I think footy is far greater than just win the amount of wins or losses we have. Footy brings people together from all corners of the world and of this country, and I think when we have a good season, I'd say that we've formed connections and bonds that go far beyond the boundary lines. And for me, that's a success. You know, how we're seen from the wider community, how we're seen within the football community as a club and as a team and as friends is, for me, the telling of a great team and telling of a great season. And those are the things that will remain with us forever.
Beautiful. You were saying the Auburn Giants are 99% Muslim. Did you feel accepted when you came into the Inner West Magpies Footy Club as a Muslim woman?
Yeah, for sure. My experience playing in the AFL competition has been great. I had, with the West, my brothers played there initially. So when I went in, kind of had a little bit of history and kind of knew a little bit about the club. But, with football, and I think with any sport in general, the unifying thing that binds us together is playing sport. So getting there and showing them, running with them, tackling with them, getting on the footy field and putting your body on the line, that earns respect. And it doesn't matter what faith you're from or what you look like or the colour of your skin, but we're all there chasing that footy. And I think that's what is binding.
Beautiful. And do you feel accepted in Australia as a Muslim woman?
This is a tough one. I thought about this question for a little while. I think Australia is tolerating to differences to a certain level, if I'm going to be completely honest. My experiences through footy and also through just work and applying for different jobs, I think the wider community are tolerating and wanting diversity to a certain degree. But when we push past different boundaries, I think that's when, and we challenge the norm, and challenging the norm of what someone from a multicultural or diverse background can do and can't do. I think that's challenging for some people, and sometimes that gets takes a little time for people to accept and acknowledge and welcome. And it's upsetting when it happens. I've had a few experiences, even like, for example, applying for jobs as a physiotherapist. I just wanted to treat anyone and athletes, regardless of what culture they're from. But a lot of the different interviews that I had coming out of uni was, she's Muslim, she can speak Arabic, we can hire her and she can work in the diverse area. And I was like, no, I'm not. Those are things that don't define me. I'm me. I am Lael. I want to treat athletes of all nations, of all colours, of all people. I don't want to be categorised into a certain group. And I think sometimes as a community or as a wider community, we seek to categorise people, and we need to actually get rid of those categorizations and just welcome everyone as humans and as people.
Well, Lael Kassem, I think you're an incredible human being. Thank you so much for joining us on Everyday Greatness today. Thank you, Lael, and thank you to Ryan Fitzgerald, who I spoke to earlier as well. Thank you all for listening. Thank you to the ARA Group for being our major sponsor for the 4th year in a row. Thank you to Look Studio Australia for recording this podcast. And I hope that when you put your device down in a little while, you lift your head up, push your shoulders back, and walk down the street proud of being an everyday Joe Bag of Donuts. I hope you can join us next week, where I'll be speaking to 2 plumbers and ex-AFL footballers, David Dighton, who played for the North Melbourne Kangaroos, and Mark Livy, who played for the Sydney Swans. I'll be talking to them about how you can help your competition to make you better and not have to drag them down. To find out more about that episode or Everyday Greatness in general, go to our website, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or LinkedIn. Thanks again for listening, and thank you, Lael.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.